Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Azure Information Protection. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to the folks joining from different parts of the globe. My name is Noor Basha, Marketing Director at Winwire Technologies, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. As you know, today's topic for the session is Azure Information Protection, which provides security for your modern enterprise workplace. So basically, in the next 30 minutes, we will discuss how Azure Information Protection increases protection for your sensitive and confidential data and help build a secure modern workplace. Before we start, let me highlight few housekeeping items. During the webinar, please feel free to post questions and we will try to answer as many as we can at the end. We are recording this session and we'll be sharing the presentation and recording to you as well as to the folks who will be missing this webinar in next 24 to 48 hours. So with that, let me take this opportunity to introduce you to today's session speaker, my colleague, Mr. Madan. He is the Senior Technical Architect at Winwire Technologies. And Madan has over 14 years of IT industry experience and is a Microsoft certified professional. He's been working with several of our enterprise customers in designing and developing applications, leveraging platforms like Azure, Office 365, and SharePoint. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Madan to take it from here. Madan, over to you.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Noor, for setting the stage, and thanks to everyone for joining this webinar. And folks, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, from folks joining across the world. In today's session, we'll be talking about Azure Information Protection, but taking a step back and probably setting the context of why we need to talk about information protection and then specifically the AIP component, right? So, few years back or maybe a decade back, a lot of your information, was in on-premises, right? So everybody from the IT team had control over the data and then how information is shared across the organization, right? But in today's day and age, that's not the case anymore. With cloud, you have PaaS offerings, SaaS offerings. The data is everywhere. So that is the reason information protection is very important. Few data points in terms of why do we need to protect the data. I know it's not so much important. Everybody in this webinar, I'm sure, understands why do we need to protect the data, and that is why you're joining this webinar. But just to set a context of, probably we are even underestimating the data protection need for data protection, right? And the business teams should not even be worrying about protecting the data. It's more from IT team who needs to make sure that yes, whatever the solutions you are using to improve your productivity, we will take care of protecting the data, right? So that's how majority of the organizations work. In some cases it is different, but that's how majority of the organizations work, right? Starting from 86% of organizations access malicious site. That is so common. Someone accessing a blog or a webinar from a website, and that probably has a link or an advertisement mistakenly, by mistake or intentionally, user clicks on it and they start accessing the malicious site, right? It starts downloading some script into your machine, and that's all a traditional way of breaching the security, right? Then there are so many cases I can keep talking about it, but in the interest of time, probably I'll move on to the core need of this. We briefly talked about it, right? What are the challenges we face when we start protecting the information, right, from an IT standpoint? It was all on-prem a decade back, or probably a little over that, and you have firewall connections, you have a perimeter network, you have so many other mechanisms where you can protect the information your team is sharing or collaborating with internally, right? So that's how it was. Then how many people remember the BYOD, right? So there was always a debate going on. Oh, should I allow BYOD or no? Bring your own device, right? So should I allow it or not allow it? There was a big debate going on, and we all crossed that battle, and pretty much most of the organizations kind of support the bring your own device methodology now, right? And so the security became a little more different when users start bringing in their own device, and so basically it adds up mobility, right? In Microsoft world, you can start thinking about Intune as one of the options, or an MDM platform, right? MDM platform, mobile device management platform in general terms. And in Microsoft world, it's the most recent one is the Intune, which is performing the mobile device management. Right? Then we are talking about cloud, right? So with the introduction of cloud and organizations adopting the cloud strategy, it's not whether we want to migrate to cloud or not. That is over probably 5 years back. By when do we want to move to cloud is the question most of the time CIOs are trying to answer as of now. I don't see any organization where they are still debating whether do we want to move to cloud or not, right? So that is kind of given. So IT needs to ensure that the data which is in cloud, on-prem, and devices access from anywhere. I just want to take a minute and probably put a different perspective on the same set of information I have. What is that we are talking about? What is the protection we are talking about, right? So we have data, we have apps, and we have multiple devices, and then different types of users, right? So that's the initial part. When we talk about users, the data currently in today's world is accessed by employees or even contractors, sometimes partners, customers. Everyone is accessing the data, right? They're not in your network. Nobody is most of these users are not sitting in your on-prem network. They're all external folks, right? A lot of them. And that leads to data leaks, security threat, and identity theft, credentials theft, and all of these security threats which we are normally not aware of. Right? What is the answer from Microsoft when everyone is talking about cloud security? What's the answer from Microsoft? Right. So Microsoft, if you talk about SaaS platform, let's say Office 365 as a whole, and Azure cloud, so you have you have PaaS and infrastructure as a service, every single element in Azure. And then from a SaaS offering standpoint, almost 95% of Fortune 500 companies are already on Office 365, right? So that is also given. So we don't need to even go back and evaluate whether we need to protect or not. You need to protect. How is what the question as of now. So that's why Microsoft came up with a brilliant answer called Azure Information Protection that takes care of all of these concerns in terms of data protection, right? And if I look at this, this may look like a complex diagram, but at a higher level, you have to be defining policies, and the first step is classification, right? So how do you classify the data? And once you start classifying, you may realize that maybe 30% or 40% of the information I have, when I say information, it could be even an email communication, or it could be a document, it could be a presentation, or it could be an intellectual property, it could be a mergers and acquisition document, or it could be even a architecture diagram, anything, right? So once you start thinking about classification, so you will realize that probably around 30 to 40% of information you have on a day-to-day basis needs, additional protection, right? So that's all, sensitive data. And what is the next step? Once you start classifying, the next step is making sure that everybody is on the same page. So you start labeling them, right? So you will, start labeling them as a second step. Then the third step in this process is protection. So you start, protecting data. Maybe you all would have heard RMS, rights management, service, and IRM, information rights management. Then you would have heard about DLP, data loss prevention, and data retention policies, all of that, right? So you start protecting the information. Then the last step is probably monitoring and logging. Okay, so you have defined the policies, you have defined the labels, but how many exceptions am I seeing on a daily basis? Someone trying to share a protected data to an external customer or a supplier, which they ideally should not be doing it, right? So you start doing monitoring and logging. And the last step, which is probably not mentioned explicitly, which is implicit, is responding. So how do you start responding? Once you start seeing exceptions, how do you start responding? You can start probably not have a discussion with the team which keeps making these exceptions and educate them, and start working on your security, start revoking access to certain users. All of that is way of responding. And what this AIP provides, at a high level, these 6 points: classify your data, protect your data, and then you get visibility and control on the exceptions, and your business team is collaborating more secure with other teams or other users. And from a business team standpoint, it's easy to use. I'm not doing anything completely different than how I used to do when I was on-prem, right? And then flexibility in terms of deployment as well as the management overall. Today we'll focus a little more about Office 365 alone. We're not going to talk about the entire Azure security. That's totally a different topic. And we'll talk more about the Office 365 security. So Office 365 has multiple components, right? So we understand all of it. SharePoint Online, we have Exchange Online, OneDrive for Business, Skype for Business, Flow, Power Apps, Sway, all of those beautiful tools Microsoft is launching and then keep improvising on a daily, weekly basis. And we have our own traditional Office, or Office rendered as Office delivered as Office Professional as part of Office 365. And Azure Information Protection along with Enterprise, it's part of the Enterprise Mobility Suite. It kind of overlaps. I wouldn't say it's part of, but it kind of overlaps with the Enterprise Mobility Suite. And it includes your rights management, your data loss protection, retention policies, and all of that. Right. So how do you start protecting the information? So when you say classify, this is classifying your data based on a set of business rules you have, right? And it could be, let's say, personal, public, and maybe highly confidential, finance only, management team only, leadership team only, all of that. Right? That's how you start classifying based on the business rules. Then you start labeling them, right? Based on the sensitivity of the information, you start labeling them so everybody is aware of it. And protection. So start encrypting the data and think about mobile application management and mobile access policies, any data loss protection rules in terms of credit card. Let's say if the document has a credit card information or a social security or any of that sensitive information. And retention. So how do you start retaining document? Let's say M&A kind of a document needs to be retained for 7 years as per your company policy, then you can start thinking about it. Right? So monitor and respond, we kind of talked about it. And what is special about Azure Information Protection, right? So all of it or some of it, you used to have it in bits and pieces in Office 365 earlier. I'm going to show a demo as well for a few minutes just to cover all of those aspects. So you kind of had all of this, right, or some of it in a probably desperate, probably in a different island. You will have a centralized location for managing all of it in one place. Right? And the advantage we get with this is the policies defined in a centralized location can be leveraged or consumed from your SharePoint Online or your Exchange Online or any of the other Office 365 products which are storing data. Right? That's how it's going to be. Then how can you classify? There are 4 different ways you can do it. Automatically, you can do it based on a set of rules defined, and we can recommend based on the document you're opening. Let's say if it has the credit card information, we can kind of recommend. Okay, here is the label which may be closest to what what the content looks like. Reclassification. So we are recommending, or there is an automatic policy applied, but the user who is editing the document feels that this may need to be reclassified as something else. So that is also a possibility, or completely manual as well. Okay, define the policies at a global level, but let me choose as a user which policy I want to apply. So though all 4 options are available, just a simple screenshot before we switch to the demo. So this is the automatic classification based on the data available. The data gets kind of classified automatically. Right? So it looks for some certain keywords and certain rules, and based on that, it automatically made the sensitivity of the information as internal. Then this is the recommended classification. Okay, based on the data you provided, based on the data I'm seeing in the document, this is what I think is the sensitivity information you may have to apply. And this is what Microsoft automatically recommends, and you as a user will be able to change it, right, based on clicking on the change now button. This is the reclassification. So automatically system classified the document, but you as a user is feeling that this classification needs to be changed for so and so reason, whatever may be the reason, right? That's what we are seeing, and that option is also available. With that context set, I'll switch to the demo. So some of you will be familiar with this, some of you may not. It actually doesn't matter. I'm going to quickly cover all of it. This is the Office 365 admin portal where you have the user group, Azure Active Directory management and all of that. Then we have the individual admin centers for SharePoint, Exchange, and we also have the security and compliance center, right? And some of you may be familiar, some of you may not. So I'm just going to cover. So this is the security and compliance center from Office 365, which some of you may be familiar with. So this has policies in a different section, right? So you have data loss prevention policies, you have data governance policies, you have the threat management, right? You have the DLP policies. So all of them, and including the GDPR dashboard, all of them you have in a separate as separate entities where you can apply policies separately, retention policies separate, DLP policies separate, and all of that. This is the, let me switch to the Azure portal. So this is the Azure administration portal, right? So I have let me start. So there's a separate service called Azure Information Protection. And in the Azure Information Protection, all you see are labels and policies. It looks very simple. It is unified and simple. Let me show you adding by adding a new label. So as you can see, how this label is displayed in the client is something that you need to be aware of. I can enable it, I can disable it, and let's say I give a name and I give a description, and I can choose a specific colors, or I can set the permissions for this document, whether I want to protect it, or I want to remove the protection, or I don't want to apply any protection for this, right? I just want to, let's say, just apply labels. That also I can do it. But you can have a separate header, you can have a watermark, you can have a footer. All of that is possible, right? So when you say watermark, it can be a text, you can change the font and all of that, right? This is a standard watermarking, right? All of them combined in the same place is what is making it unique with the Azure Information Protection. So where do you want to place the watermark, and what should be the color, what's the font and everything. So if I have to protect the document, I can set permissions for this document. The permissions can be a specific user, or even a domain, right? Let's say I want to apply this permissions for a supplier A, right? So I have an external facing SharePoint site, for example, which is a common use case, and I want to make sure that anyone from this company, any authenticated user from this company needs to have access. Then I will be able to do that here, right? I can specifically say that, okay, anyone from @suppliera.com email address will have this level of access. They may be an author, they may be just a viewer, or you can also apply custom permissions. So for all of the users, you may have to choose this view right and allow macros, because that's those two are critical. But other than that, it is pretty self-explanatory to go through this permissions and all of that. So then I can define the content expiration lifecycle as well. I can say this content should expire by so and so date. This is what you would typically do it using the retention policies in earlier days, and that is something you can apply in the same place itself. And I can another question typically it comes up is, how do I make sure that the files are protected throughout? That's where a lot of questions. Okay, all of this you're showing everything is great, but how do I make sure that the information is protected anytime, right? Whether the file is at rest or at transit, whether it is uploaded to SharePoint, or is it sent over email. When the supplier or someone downloads the file, what do I need to have? So this is where this setting makes a lot of sense. Every time someone opens a document, whether it is downloaded to their local, or through an from an email, or from SharePoint, or maybe from OneDrive, right? You can choose that every time they have to authenticate. So this way, you don't have a fear of, someone from supplier A is leaving the company, and he still have access to the information, right? He should not be having it. So that you don't have to worry about that user management at all, and everything is taken care. If you choose the policies, right, and then say anybody who is trying to open this document always needs to have, always needs to authenticate himself. Right? So that's pretty much it. From a from an Azure demo perspective, just want to quickly show you guys a client, which is there's is a client called Azure Information Protection Client. And what type of files can be protected, right? So if you apply these policies, this can be automatic. Let's say you can say, I want this policy to be applied for all of my SharePoint sites or on all of my Exchange, right? So let me quickly cover that as well, and then I'll open up for questions. So you can apply this policy, and then you can say what are all the labels I want to have, and you can say what is the default level, what is the default label level, and what all areas I need to apply this policy to. Right? So everything is possible in this same section itself. And how do I apply policies? Let's say if I'm not uploading to SharePoint, I'm just going to send an email. You can, there are multiple ways you can do it. There is the Azure Information Protection client. So you would see an option once you install that. You would see an option called Classify and Protect. So as soon as I'm done with the document, I just start saying, okay, I classify this document as personal or maybe confidential or highly confidential, right? So that I can do it. This can be done for Office documents, or it can be done for almost majority of the type of documents. Even PDF files, you can do the classify, right? For all the Microsoft Office documents, by default you can apply this label in SharePoint Online. Let's say as soon as you drag and drop the file into SharePoint, you can apply it, right? For other type of files, you'll have to use the client and protect it, and then either apply it on even the slide deck. I can, when you open the Office document, it has an option coming up on your slide deck itself, right? That's another option as well. Okay. And last point to cover, the mobility and security. You will have to have the EMS E3 or E5 is what I would propose, but EMS E3 or E5 is what you need to have. E5 has additional protection in terms of automatically applying policies to all of your workload. That is possible with E5. With that said, I'll give it back to you, Noor, to cover if there are any questions.
Thanks, Madan. Thanks for the quick session. Really interesting, and it really helps us to know how we can protect the confidential and very sensitive information. Yes, I do have a few questions coming in. And the first question that comes from John is what type of files are supported for protection using Azure Information Protection?
Sure. It's typically all Microsoft Office files, by default, which is a no-brainer. Then, your PDF. There are probably around 85 different, file types currently, it is supported. It kind of, covers pretty much any type of, file any organization would have, right? And there are some files which are natively supported directly on SharePoint and Exchange, and there are some files which are supported using the Azure Information Protection client, right? I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Madan. That helps. So the other question what I have is, can I automatically apply labels based on the policies?
Yes. So when you automatically apply, when you set up the policies in the Azure Information Protection client, admin portal, you have an option to have, okay, do you want to apply it manually? Do you want to have the users apply manually, or automatically apply based on certain criteria? Right? It could be just having credit card information apply automatically as finance label, right? Finance only label. So that is absolutely possible.
Perfect. Thanks, Madan. There are few more questions, but I would like to take them offline in the interest of time. But before we wrap up, I think one of the quick announcement that I would like to make is, which is on the SharePoint Spaces. Probably, I'm sure most of you guys would know Microsoft unveiled or like announced latest version of mixed reality come AI to the SharePoint, which is SharePoint Spaces, a feature that allows companies to create and consume mixed reality for viewing your data and documents within the SharePoint across any devices or across any browsers. So we are going to have a very deep dive session on SharePoint Spaces in next few weeks. So we are just locking down the dates and time for this particular webinar. Stay tuned. We will come back to you with more details on that, and you can also visit our website. Probably by next week, we should have all that information out there. And like I'm looking forward for you guys to join that webinar. In addition, like if you have any questions, please send it across to marketing@winwire.com, and we would be more than happy to take those questions. That's it. Again, thanks for joining this webinar. Thanks, Madan, for walking us through this wonderful session on AIP. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.